actually the way that I know that I followed lots of the lines that I found, giant rivers and giant canals. So what happens is that you have the largest of the oceans is the North, which is the North Ocean because it comes off of the North Pole, the North Ice Continent, right? So you have the largest ocean, and from the largest ocean you have canals literally pushing onto basically each side of Australia and part of New Zealand, and you have these canals and these waterways, and they're also blocked by the giant freshwater rivers coming down from the Antarctic mountains, which is quite spectacular. You see the South Pole is there, and that ice, it's literally aligning those mountains. The glaciers are in the mountains of the Antarctic, so they melt down fresh water, and it melts like all the way, into New Zealand and even Australia to a certain extent. You got ice marshes, and Australia is isolated by these canals because you see what happens is that the largest of the ocean, the North, is the strongest, has the strongest flow, so it's pushing. And it's pushing all the way into the South Ocean. See? There you go. And then, once again, there's a canal lining Africa and some of the large marshes, and it goes through again. And it pushes just one. See, there's two that come out of the largest ocean. One that comes out of the smallest. And it pushes into the west, no, that is the east, and the west ocean. This is the east. See? And it pushes like that. So it actually creates a very stable water flow on the planet. It also helps to keep the rivers inland, just like the marshes do. And, since the oceans are smaller and they have different pH balances, because the south pH balance is different from the north. The north, when it's pushing into it, it's literally stabilizing that pH balance, and that's doing it to the east, and then it's doing it to the west. You go from the coldest ocean to warmer, and then to a bit warmer again, then you have the warmest ocean being the west. The west, right? The east? No, the west, yeah. So there you go, you have that going on. And that's the whole point. There's lots of isolated marshes and isolated areas. And they're isolated, like Africa. The marshes that are on the other side here tend to be isolated by the mountains. And those mountains also protect the water from coming out completely out of Africa. So it creates an Africa that's like a lot more lush. So those deserts don't really exist like that anymore. In that world, there's areas where there would be sand dune like deserts, but generally there's no such thing as a desert on this green planet, because it's really green. And as of now, it's actually more blue because there's so much more ocean. So you have Australia, which is isolated. Where's Australia? Australia, right there. Okay, right. South. Right here, see, there's Australia. Australia is isolated by these canals, and giant crocodiles swim in these canals. And because Australia is isolated, it permitted it to have a bit of a different wildlife. So that's what happens there. And Antarctica is also very much isolated as well, because then Antarctica has the ice pole on it, so there's the ice isolating it there, and then there's all the mountains on one side. So literally, there's two different sides to South America. I mean, not South Antarctica. There's two different isolated areas. So you get different types of animals on both sides, and then you get isolated again by another type of giant marsh. So Antarctica, the mountains in Antarctica, and the plains and those areas in Antarctica are very much an isolated area, and can have, that's where some of the most unique animals were, just like Australia is very isolated, where you get some of the more unique animals as well too. So that's the way it is there, like that. And you know, you get isolation due to different effects. The giant marshes really do isolate continents a lot, except, you know, most continents are still very much connected, and even they were more connected back then. It was actually quite easy for some animals to even travel like, almost all the way around the world. You could go from one end to another end quite easily, you know. But what happens is, like, yeah, you have the water that rises, all these land masses get, you know, washed away, but you also get the pressure of this water on top of the land. You know, it also creates depressions, and eventually that's the whole point. You get entire land masses that just sink in. So, I mean, it's not necessarily just North America and Europe or Europe-Asia that's connected by land masses, but there's actually more land masses. There used to be more in between North America and South America, and well, obviously Africa and Eurasia are very well connected, but there used to be a lot more land masses as well in between the Asian islands and Asia. So you also had that effect as well. So you had animals that had long distances they could travel to do their routes, and it helps that the Earth is actually a lot warmer, because, you know, now it spins differently. It's like there's more weight at the on the top on the poles. There's more pressure there, so it spins a little bit faster, and by doing that we get longer days, more sun, and shorter years. So you have and you get warmer climates. Having the marshes all around the continents is a plus, because what happens is that a lot of that moisture that's coming out of those marshes because of the evaporation and you know, because of that, you know, it literally creates clouds that get pushed up into the mainlands and into the mountains, and it keeps it, you know, a good flow to these rains. So you get these constant rains that come constantly, you know, they would come several times in a day, and you get a lot more moisture everywhere on the planet just because of these marshes. But it's not just because of that, it's also because of the ice poles as well, you know, and there's less salt water as well. So you have less salt water, you have less ocean, you have more water that is fresh water. So you have more rain, you have more moisture, you have more condensation. So it does that. It keeps the world a million times like more moist. I mean, there's no such thing as really a desert, except for like a sand dune type desert. It's just an area where there's a lot of sand, but there's just not enough, you know, fertile ground to grow something, you know. So that's pretty much all you get as an effect. And so you'd have animals that could travel really easily, you know, from Europe all the way into South America. And you could have so many different types of routes for these animals to take. The birds that had so many different types of routes they could take, you know, go up and winding down the side of a continent where there's an isolated marsh, or a whole bunch of different things going on. So you get actually more isolation also on the continents themselves and on the mainlands and in the giant marshes as well, because sometimes of giant rivers. Because there's more water on land, and because you have the ice poles literally melting down the mountains, fresh water down into the mountains of the Rocky Mountains of North America, and then into the Antarctic mountains. You have all that water just running down. You have humongous rivers. that literally just run right through entire continents sometimes and isolate entire areas. And you tend to have bigger seas trapped inside trapped inside the continents, and also because of the giant marshes, you have different types of seas all over the world. So that's the effect you get. Instead of having these giant oceans just dominating everywhere, you have more little seas. Well, and they're actually more bigger seas, but it's bigger seas. Seas are smaller than oceans, so you get bigger seas and smaller oceans. So you get that effect. You get also bigger rivers, and you get bigger lakes. And, I mean, you get that effect of having islands isolated inside of lakes. And you get all types of animals just coexisting really easily on this planet because the water is separated and flows differently and it is differently spread out on the planet. So that's one of the effects you get. And that effect too, that effect of having those giant marshes and those giant marsh rivers winding, towards land, it also keeps the fresh water from flowing out of the continents as much. So it doesn't flow out as much. It's just stuff. I could probably go on for hours, but I'll just keep making some videos to you about it.